It started with a simple decision, something that felt so small, so trivial at the time. But looking back, that one choice set everything into motion. I remember it clearly. I was walking home from the grocery store, the usual errand, nothing special. It was one of those days where the weather couldn't decide between sun or rain, so the air was thick and heavy, but not quite enough to call it a storm. I was carrying a bag of groceries, my mind lost in a random thought when my phone buzzed. A notification from my wife, Olivia. Now, Olivia wasn't the type to send me random messages throughout the day. We had a rhythm. She worked late shifts at the hospital, I worked from home on my startup, and we'd talk at night. But today, there was something different about it. I opened the message. I need to talk to you. Can you meet me for coffee tonight? Nothing strange about that, I thought. Maybe she wanted to discuss something, work, plans, or maybe the fact that I'd been spending more time in front of the computer lately. She had been worried about that for weeks. But here's the thing, I knew something was off. It was the tone of the message, too formal, too distant. And there was a strange weight in the way she worded it. The words themselves weren't alarming, but something in the pit of my stomach told me this wasn't just about coffee. I didn't know why, but I had a gut feeling. I had this strange sense that something was coming, and I wasn't sure if I was ready for it. Still, I told myself to shake it off. Maybe I was just overthinking. I had a tendency to do that, especially when things were quiet for too long. But even as I agreed to meet her later that evening, I felt this gnawing feeling inside me, like I was standing on the edge of something big that I couldn't yet see. I had no idea that my whole life was about to be shattered in a way that felt like it was straight out of a movie. That night, we met at a small cafe near our apartment. Nothing fancy. Olivia had already arrived when I walked in, sitting in our usual booth by the window, a coffee cup in front of her, and her phone in her hand. Her eyes didn't quite meet mine when I sat down. I thought it was just nerves, or maybe the long day at work. But as I looked at her face, I realized it wasn't just that. There was something different, something in the way she was holding herself. Tense, like she was bracing for something. The silence stretched for a moment before she looked up at me and said, in the most calm voice she could manage, "I think we should separate for a while." Now, I'm no fool. I wasn't expecting this, but I wasn't entirely blindsided either. Over the past few months, I'd noticed the subtle changes. The way she started staying late at work more often. The distance in her eyes when we were together. But I refused to admit to myself that this was happening. And here it was. The truth. Like a slap in the face. I just stared at her for what felt like forever. I could hear the sounds of the cafe, the clinking of cups, the murmur of conversation, but it all felt like it was happening a million miles away. My mind was racing. "Wait," I said, trying to wrap my head around what she just said. "Are you saying we're done?" She nodded slowly, her fingers tracing the rim of her coffee cup. Her eyes avoided mine, as if she couldn't bear to see the hurt she had just caused. "I don't know. I don't feel like we're the same anymore," she said, her voice barely above a whisper. "I don't love you the way I used to." My chest tightened. My thoughts were a blur, and I had no idea how to react. Part of me wanted to lash out, scream, demand answers, but the other part of me, some part one didn't even recognize, felt strangely calm. Like I was watching this unfold from a distance, detached from the emotions I should have been feeling. I asked her the one question I was terrified to ask. "Is there someone else?" She hesitated for a moment, her eyes flickering to the side before she met my gaze again. "Yes." The word hit me like a freight train, and for a second, I felt like the air had been sucked out of the room. But I didn't show it. I couldn't. I wasn't going to let her see the pain on my face. I wasn't going to let her know how much this hurt. The conversation went on after that. Half-hearted explanations, vague apologies, the promise of things being better for both of us in the long run, but none of it mattered. I already knew everything I needed to know. We were done. When I left the cafe, I walked back home in a daze. My mind was foggy, processing everything too slowly. The hardest part wasn't even the fact that Olivia was leaving me. It was the complete lack of closure. The idea that someone who had once been my everything could walk away so easily. And that's when I decided something. I wasn't going to let her off that easily. But I didn't know what I would do next. I didn't know that within a week, everything would spiral far beyond my control, and Olivia's life, and my own, would change in ways we could never have predicted. That night, I couldn't sleep. I tossed and turned in bed, staring at the ceiling, replaying every single moment from the cafe over and over. The words she said, "I don't love you the way I used to," kept echoing in my head, like some twisted soundtrack to a nightmare I couldn't wake up from. The whole night felt like a blur, but it wasn't the exhaustion that kept me awake. No, it was the realization. I was married to someone who didn't love me anymore. I had spent the better part of 3 years thinking I knew everything about her. We had made plans together, talked about our future, dreamed about our own little family. And yet here she was, sitting across from me just a few hours ago, telling me that she had fallen out of love with me. I didn't know how to handle it. Part of me was angry, furious, even. I had invested so much into this relationship, given so much of myself to her. And for what? So she could throw it all away without any real explanation? But another part was numb. I couldn't wrap my head around it. I didn't understand why. I had spent the entire evening replaying every conversation, every moment we shared, trying to find something, anything, that would explain this sudden shift. But the truth was, I couldn't find anything. No signs, no clues. It was like a switch had been flipped, and just like that, she was gone. The next morning, I woke up with a pit in my stomach. The cold light of day only made things worse. I stood in the bathroom, staring at my reflection, trying to find something in my eyes that resembled strength. But there was nothing there, just a hollow shell. I didn't text her. I didn't try to call her. I knew that any attempt to talk to her would just be futile at this point. She had made up her mind. But I couldn't shake the feeling that something wasn't right. It wasn't just her leaving. It wasn't even her finding someone else. No, there was something deeper. Something that didn't sit well with me. I decided I needed answers. I don't know why I felt so compelled to investigate. I wasn't a jealous person. I never had been. But after what she told me, I couldn't help it. The questions, the doubts, they gnawed at me. Who was this other person? How long had this been going on? I told myself I wouldn't go down this road, that I wouldn't stoop to spying on her. But after a few days, the itch in the back of my mind became unbearable. I couldn't ignore it anymore. I needed to know. I started with something simple, her social media. She wasn't the type to post much, but I knew she had a few pictures on there. I figured I'd just take a look, see if anything seemed off, if there was any indication of this someone else she had mentioned. I scrolled through her posts, her pictures, nothing out of the ordinary. But then I came across a post she had made a few weeks ago. A picture of her and some guy at a coffee shop. The caption read, "Having the best time with someone who makes me feel alive." My heart stopped. I stared at the picture for what felt like an eternity. The guy in the picture was smiling, his arm casually around her shoulders, like they had been friends for years. But something about it felt off. The way she looked at him was different from the way she looked at me. I couldn't quite put my finger on it, but it was there. That spark, that connection. I knew something was going on, but I didn't know what. The next day, I decided to confront her. I wasn't going to play the victim anymore. I wasn't going to sit around and let her do whatever she wanted while I stewed in silence. I showed up at her apartment unannounced, determined to get the answers I needed. When she opened the door, she looked surprised to see me. Her eyes darted nervously, like she didn't want me to be there. "Quinn," she said, her voice sounding flat. "What are you doing here?" "I need to talk to you," I said, trying to keep my voice steady. "I saw the picture, the one you posted with him." Her face went pale, and for the first time, I saw a hint of guilt in her eyes. "You shouldn't have seen that," she muttered, stepping aside so I could come in. I didn't sit down. I wasn't here to make small talk. "Who is he?" I demanded. "How long has this been going on?" Olivia hesitated, her eyes shifting away from mine. I could see the weight of her guilt in her expression, but she wouldn't meet my gaze. "I didn't want you to find out like this," she said softly. "His name is Luke. We've been seeing each other for a few months now." I felt the ground shift beneath me. The words she said were clear, but they hit like a wave, knocking the air out of me. "A few months? You've been seeing him while we were together?" I asked, barely able to control my voice. She nodded, her eyes finally meeting mine. "I'm sorry, Quinn, but I didn't know how to end things with you. It was easier to just keep pretending." The words cut deeper than anything she had said before. I didn't know how to respond. My mind was racing, my thoughts a whirlwind. How long had she been lying to me? How long had she been planning this? The betrayal ran deeper than just her leaving me for another person. It was the deceit, the hidden life, the lies she had been feeding me all along. But I wasn't done yet. I didn't say a word as I turned around and walked out of the apartment. I needed space. I needed time to think, to process everything. But I also knew something had changed. This wasn't just about a breakup anymore. This wasn't just about Olivia leaving me for someone else. This was about something much bigger. Something I hadn't even begun to comprehend. The days after my confrontation with Olivia felt like I was living in a fog. I couldn't escape the image of her standing in front of me, her words echoing in my mind. We've been seeing each other for a few months now. The betrayal stung in a way I never could have imagined. But beyond that, there was something else gnawing at me, something darker. Something didn't sit right with the way Olivia had handled everything. The fact that she'd been hiding this for months while pretending everything was fine between us, it didn't add up. I spent the next few days in a haze of confusion, sorting through the mess in my head. I tried to focus on my work, but every email, every conversation, felt like it was happening in another reality. My mind kept returning to the same question. How long had this been going on? I couldn't let go of the idea that there was more to this than just a simple affair. Maybe it was just the way Olivia was acting. So calm, so distant, as if she had no real remorse for what she was doing. She had told me she was sorry, but her actions said otherwise. And if she could hide something this significant for months, what else had she been keeping from me? So, I did what I should have done from the beginning. I started looking into it. I wasn't proud of it. The obsessive searching, the late nights, the digging through her things when she wasn't around. But the more I discovered, the more it became clear that Olivia wasn't the person I thought she was. I started by going through her phone. At first, I hesitated. Part of me felt like I was crossing a line. But then again, hadn't she already crossed it with me? I had every right to know the truth. Her phone was locked, of course, but I'd always known her passcode. She never thought to change it. Why would she? I had no reason to go through her things, until now. I unlocked it and immediately went to her messages. At first, there was nothing too revealing, just the usual work texts, messages to friends, some random memes she'd sent. But then, buried deep in the archives, I found a series of texts between Olivia and Luke, the guy she had been seeing. The first few were innocuous enough. Simple check-ins. But as the weeks passed, the tone of the text shifted. They got more intimate, more secretive. There were mentions of late-night meetings, stolen moments, words of affection I had never received. One message caught my eye, though. It wasn't one of the regular texts. It was from a few days before she told me we should separate for a while. She had written, "I don't know how much longer I can keep this up. Quinn's starting to suspect something's off. I can't let him know." My stomach dropped. She was lying to me. She knew what she was doing, and she was hiding it. But what was the real reason? I couldn't help but feel like I was just a pawn in some twisted game, one that I hadn't even realized I was playing until it was too late. I kept digging. I went through her photos, her contacts, everything I could get my hands on. It wasn't until I came across a folder labeled Luke that I knew I had found something important. Inside, there were pictures. Pictures of Olivia and Luke at various places, laughing, holding hands, looking like they were in love. But one photo stood out above the rest. It was a selfie taken in front of our favorite restaurant, the one Olivia and I had gone to for our anniversary last year. I felt a sickening twist in my gut. She had been there with him. While I was at home, thinking everything was fine, she was out living a life I had no idea about. A life she had been hiding from me. The pieces were starting to fall into place, but something didn't add up. I couldn't put my finger on it, but there was a bigger picture here, one that I hadn't yet seen. I started thinking back to our interactions. Olivia had always been so thoughtful, so considerate. But lately, she had been distant. She'd stopped texting me back for hours, making up excuses for why she couldn't see me. And I had believed it, of course. I didn't want to see what was right in front of me. But now, with all this information in front of me, it was clear she had been slipping away for months. It was then that I remembered something else. Something small, something seemingly insignificant, but it suddenly felt very important. A few weeks before all of this started, Olivia had mentioned a work trip. She'd said she was going to be out of town for a few days. I hadn't thought much of it at the time. She worked long hours and had a demanding job. But now, looking back, I wondered if that trip had been a cover for something else. Had she been with Luke during that time? Was that when their relationship had really started? The more I thought about it, the more I realized that I couldn't just let this go. I had to confront her, but this time, I wasn't going to let her dictate the narrative. I wasn't going to let her walk away from everything and pretend nothing happened. I had no idea what I was about to uncover, but I knew that everything was about to change. Olivia had already taken a piece of my life, but I wasn't going to let her take my dignity as well. I couldn't shake the feeling that there was still more I hadn't uncovered. The mess I had dug into seemed to have layers upon layers, each more unsettling than the last. The photos, the texts, the lies, everything pointed to the same conclusion. Olivia had been deceiving me. But the more I dug, the more I realized there were pieces of the puzzle I had yet to find. I was in too deep now, and there was no going back. The next day, I decided to take the next step. I couldn't just sit back and let her control the narrative anymore. I had to know exactly what had been going on, and I needed to confront her. This time, with everything I had. It wasn't just about the affair anymore. It was about understanding the full extent of the lies she had spun and why she thought she could get away with it. I called in sick to work. I couldn't focus on anything else. Everything felt like it was spiraling, and I had no choice but to dive in head first. If I was going to fix this, if I was going to take back control of my life, I needed answers. I knew Olivia was at work, and I thought about just showing up at the hospital where she worked, demanding answers right there, but I wasn't a fool. If I confronted her like that, there was a chance she would just lie her way out of it, or worse, spin some story that made me look like the villain. I wasn't going to let that happen. I needed to play this carefully. I decided to follow her. I needed to know where she went when she said she was working late. Something told me I might find more than I expected. I waited until late in the afternoon, then slipped into my car and followed her. I kept my distance, not wanting her to spot me. She drove her usual route through the city, and for a while, I thought maybe I had been wrong. Maybe she was just heading to work, like she said. But then, she made an unexpected turn onto a road I knew too well. It was a quiet street, lined with older buildings, and she pulled into a parking lot I recognized immediately. It was the same parking lot I had seen her car in the night she had told me she needed some space. The same parking lot I had passed by countless times without giving it a second thought. But this time, it felt different. This time, I knew something was wrong. I parked a few spaces away, out of sight, and waited. My heart was pounding in my chest. I didn't know what I was hoping to find, but I couldn't shake the feeling that this was it. The moment when everything would come crashing down. After what felt like an eternity, Olivia finally got out of her car. But she wasn't alone. A tall man stepped out of the building and walked towards her. He had a familiar face, Luke, the man she had been seeing behind my back. My stomach dropped. I watched as they exchanged a brief, awkward greeting before walking toward the entrance of the building together. I couldn't move. I couldn't breathe. My mind was racing, trying to piece together everything I had seen, everything I had uncovered. This wasn't just an affair anymore. This was something deeper, something more complicated than I had ever imagined. I watched them disappear inside, and for a long time, I just sat there. I didn't know what to do. I felt betrayed, yes, but also lost. I had been so sure that Olivia and I had something real. We had built a life together. But now, everything felt like a lie. I couldn't stay in the car forever. I had to confront her, but I didn't know how to do it. How do you confront someone with the truth when you're not even sure you're ready for it yourself? But there was no turning back now. I had seen enough. I had all the proof I needed. The time for wondering and second-guessing was over. I drove home, my mind still spinning. When I walked in the door, I didn't even bother to change out of my clothes. I just went straight to the living room, sat down, and tried to gather my thoughts. Olivia was supposed to be home in a few hours. I needed to prepare myself for what was coming. I wasn't going to be blindsided again. I thought about what I would say to her. I could feel the anger bubbling up inside me. It wasn't just about the affair anymore. It was about the disrespect, the lies, the way she had made me feel like I was the problem. She had manipulated me into thinking I was losing my mind when all along, she had been the one betraying me. But no matter how angry I was, I had to keep my cool. I couldn't let her see me as weak. I couldn't let her manipulate me any longer. That evening, as the sun set and the sky darkened, I heard her car pull into the driveway. I stood up, my heart pounding in my chest. This was it, the moment of truth. She walked in the door, looking tired, but as always, her smile was there. But this time, it didn't reach her eyes. "Hey," she said, her voice light. "How was your day?" I didn't answer right away. I stood there for a moment, just looking at her. I could feel the weight of everything pressing down on me, but I couldn't hold it in any longer. "Who is he, Olivia?" I asked, my voice steady but cold. Her smile faltered, and for the first time in weeks, I saw a flicker of fear in her eyes. Quinn, what are you talking about? She said, trying to act innocent, but I saw through it. I had seen enough. I followed you today, I said. I saw you with Luke. I saw you walk into that building together. Don't lie to me. I know what's been going on. She froze. Her face turned pale, and for a moment, she didn't say anything. But then, she opened her mouth, and I knew she was about to spin the same lie she had been telling me all along. But this time, I wasn't going to let her. The silence between us was deafening. She stood there in the doorway, her hand still on the doorknob, eyes wide with a mixture of surprise and something I couldn't quite place. Guilt, maybe, but I wasn't sure. Whatever it wasn't enough to hide the fact that she had been caught. For a few long seconds, neither of us moved. I could feel my pulse racing, but I wasn't going to let that distract me. I had already been patient with her for far too long. I had let her lie, let her manipulate the situation, but not anymore. This wasn't just about her betrayal. It was about the way she had made me feel like I was crazy, like I was imagining things, when all along, I had been right. You followed me? She asked, her voice soft, almost defensive. She didn't seem angry or shocked. She sounded like she was trying to explain something I wasn't supposed to understand. Yeah, I followed you. I replied, my voice calm, though my insides were anything but. I had to see for myself. Had to know what you were really doing when you said you were working late. Her eyes flickered for a moment, and she took a step toward me, but I held up my hand to stop her. I wasn't going to let her get close enough to manipulate me, not this time. I know everything, Olivia, I said. I saw you with Luke today. I know about the affair. I know it's been going on for months, and I know you've been lying to me this whole time. I could see her fighting to maintain control, but it was slipping. Her gaze darted around the room, her fingers twitching at her side. She opened her mouth to speak, but nothing came out at first. She was trying to come up with something, anything, to explain away the truth I had just laid bare. Quinn, listen, she started, but I cut her off before she could continue. Don't, I said, the anger building in me. Don't you dare try to explain yourself. You made your choice, and now I'm just supposed to accept it? Her face twisted with frustration, and finally, the mask cracked. It's not that simple, Quinn. You don't understand what it's like. Don't I? I shot back, my voice rising. Don't I? I've been the one giving, the one who trusted you, the one who thought everything was fine. You've been hiding this from me for months. Months, Olivia. And you think I don't understand? Her eyes welled up with tears, but I wasn't moved by them. Not anymore. The guilt, the sorrow in her face, was just another layer of manipulation, and I wasn't going to let her use it to make me feel bad for standing up for myself. I never wanted to hurt you, she said, her voice shaking now. I never meant for this to happen. Then why did you do it? I demanded. Why did you go behind my back, pretending everything was fine, when you were out there with him? She hesitated. For the first time, she seemed to struggle with the weight of the situation. She opened her mouth again, but instead of a quick defense, she let out a long, shaky breath. I don't know, she whispered. I thought I could make it work with both of you. I thought I could keep it separate, that you'd never find out. But I was wrong. I shook my head, the betrayal sinking deeper into my chest. You thought you could keep this a secret forever? How long did you think that would last, Olivia? You've been lying to me, to both of us, and you think I'm just supposed to accept it? The tears were falling freely now, but it didn't make a difference. It didn't erase the fact that she had betrayed me in the worst way possible. I never meant for it to be like this. I couldn't let go of him. Something inside me snapped. I don't know what it was, but I could feel my entire body tense with fury. I didn't even know how to process what she was saying. You couldn't let go? And you thought that was a good enough excuse to tear our lives apart? To use me like this? I'm sorry, Quinn, she said again, the words meaningless. I never wanted to hurt you. I laughed bitterly, shaking my head. But you did. You hurt me. You destroyed everything we had. And now you want me to feel sorry for you? After everything you've done? She stepped closer, but I held my ground. She reached for my hand, but I pulled away sharply. No, don't touch me. She looked at me, her face crumpling in desperation. Please, just let me explain. I know I messed up, but I want to fix this. I want to fix us. It was like a switch flipped in my brain. I had been holding on to this idea that maybe, just maybe, We could work things out, that she could fix what she had broken. But now, in this moment, I realized that I didn't want to fix anything. I didn't want to salvage a relationship built on lies and deceit. I was done. Olivia, I said, my voice colder than it had ever been. You don't get to fix this. Not anymore. You don't get to come back and pretend everything can be okay after what you've done. You've already made your choice. And so have I. Her face drained of color as the words sank in. For a long moment, she just stared at me, her mouth moving as if she wanted to say something, but nothing came out. It was like she finally realized that the door she had been trying to keep open was now permanently shut. I took a step back, the finality of my words hanging in the air. I'm done, Olivia. You're not going to manipulate me into thinking I'm the one who's wrong here. Not anymore. The silence that followed was heavy, suffocating. She stood there, her tears still falling, but they no longer held any power over me. I had been weak for too long, hoping she would change, hoping she would realize the gravity of what she had done. But now, I realized that I was the one who needed to change. I was the one who needed to reclaim my life, to take back what she had so thoughtlessly thrown away. Goodbye, Olivia, I said, turning toward the door. She didn't stop me. I walked out, leaving behind everything I thought I knew, everything I thought I had. And as I stepped out into the night, I realized that the hardest part wasn't leaving her. It was realizing that the person I had been for the past few years was gone, too. I had no idea what to expect after I left Olivia's place. The shock of finally confronting her, of finally putting the pieces together and realizing how deep the betrayal went, still lingered in the back of my mind. I thought that walking away would be a relief. I thought I would feel like I had regained control over my life. But instead, I felt numb. I spent the next few days in a haze. I couldn't think straight, couldn't focus on anything. I had lost more than just a partner. I had lost the life I thought I had. The future I had envisioned was now a shattered dream. All the little things that had once seemed so trivial, the shared jokes, the quiet mornings together, were now like foreign memories. I kept wondering how I hadn't seen it coming, how she had managed to hide her affair for so long without me even noticing. But then again, maybe I hadn't been paying attention. Maybe I had been too comfortable in my own life to notice the cracks appearing beneath the surface. The days following our confrontation felt like a blur. I stayed holed up in my apartment, not wanting to deal with the outside world, not wanting to face anyone who might ask how things were going. I avoided my friends, avoided calls from family, even avoided the news. The silence was deafening, and I was left with nothing but my own thoughts. But then, one evening, I received a message. It was from Olivia. At first, I thought it was some sort of mistake. Why would she be reaching out to me after everything that had happened? I hadn't expected her to give up so easily, but I certainly didn't think she would contact me again, especially after the way I had walked out of her life. The message was simple, but the words hit harder than anything she had said before. I know you're angry. I know I've messed everything up, but I need to see you. There's something I have to tell you. I stared at the message for a long time, torn between the desire to delete it and the need to understand what she could possibly want now. After everything she had done, what could she possibly say that would change anything? I almost deleted it, but something stopped me. I had to know. I had to hear her side of the story, even if it made me sick to think about it. I agreed to meet her at the same cafe we had gone to weeks ago. The place that had once felt like a neutral ground, a place where we had shared so many quiet, intimate moments. Now it felt like a battleground, like I was walking into enemy territory. When I arrived, Olivia was already sitting at the same table, her hands folded in front of her. She looked different, smaller somehow, like the weight of what had happened was finally starting to catch up with her. Her eyes were red, and her expression was a mix of sorrow and regret. I didn't sit down immediately. I stood there for a moment, staring at her, trying to make sense of why I was even here. But I couldn't. Part of me wanted to tell her to get lost, to never speak to me again. But another part of me, the part that had spent years loving her, wanted to hear her out. She was the first to speak. Quinn, I know I don't deserve your forgiveness. I don't even know if I deserve a chance to explain myself, but I have to try. I crossed my arms, not sure how to respond. You've had your chance. More than one, actually. You had months, Olivia. Months to tell me the truth, and you chose to lie. Every day? So don't sit here and act like you're the victim in this. She winced, but didn't argue. I know. I don't expect you to forgive me. But you deserve to know the full truth. You deserve that, at least. I sat down, though my anger still burned inside. I couldn't understand why. After everything that had happened, I was still willing to hear her out. But I was here now, and I needed to know what she was going to say. I've been seeing Luke for 6 months, she began, her voice trembling. But it wasn't just an affair. It wasn't just about cheating or any of the things you might think. I've been confused. I thought I loved him, but it wasn't what I thought it was. He's everything I thought I wanted, but he's not you. I raised an eyebrow, not sure if I was hearing her correctly. So, you were in love with him, but it wasn't what you thought it was? How does that even make sense? She wiped her eyes and took a deep breath. I was lost, Quinn. I didn't know what I wanted, and I made a huge mistake. I kept telling myself that leaving you was the right thing to do, but then I realized it wasn't. I'm sorry. I should have come to you sooner. I should have told you the truth before things got so out of hand. Why didn't you? I asked, my voice sharper now. Why didn't you tell me before it got to this point? You've been lying to me for months, Olivia. Do you really think I can just forgive that? She hesitated for a long moment, like she was searching for the right words, but there was nothing that could fix what she had done. I don't expect you to forgive me, Quinn. I don't think I deserve that. But I want to be honest with you now. I ended things with Luke. I realized I was using him to avoid dealing with everything I was running from you. Her words hit me harder than I expected. Part of me wanted to feel relief, to feel like maybe things could be fixed, but the other part of me was still burning with anger. How could she expect me to just accept that everything could go back to normal? How could she expect me to believe that her decision to end things with Luke meant anything? I ended it with him, Quinn, she repeated. I made a mistake. And I'm sorry. I truly am. But I'm here because I need to make things right between us. I don't expect it to be easy, but I don't want to lose you. The weight of her words settled in the air between us, heavy and thick. I wanted to scream, to tell her that there was no going back, that everything she had done had already destroyed whatever we once had. But instead, I sat there, frozen, trying to understand if there was any part of me that still cared enough to even consider what she was saying. But in that moment, as I looked at her, the woman who had once meant everything to me, I realized something. No matter how much I wanted to, I could never forget what she had done. I could never look at her the same way again. I don't think I can, I said quietly, my voice breaking for the first time. I don't think I can forgive you. Not after everything. Her face crumpled in a way I hadn't expected, and for the first time, I saw the person she really was, someone who had been broken all along, but never cared enough to admit it. The silence hung in the air between us like an unspoken truth. I could feel the weight of the words I had just said pressing down on me, but there was no taking them back. The relief I thought I might feel from finally saying it. The truth, the thing I had been holding inside for days, weeks even, wasn't there. All I felt was a sick, hollow emptiness. I had wanted closure. I had wanted to feel free. But instead, it felt like I had just opened the door to something darker, something deeper than I could ever have anticipated. Olivia sat across from me, her eyes wet with tears. She was shaking slightly, like she was trying to hold herself together, but there was no hiding the devastation in her face. The woman who had once been my whole world, the one I had shared everything with, now looked like a stranger, a person who had committed an unforgivable betrayal. Quinn, she whispered, her voice barely audible. I know I've hurt you more than you can imagine. I don't deserve your forgiveness, I know that. But please, please don't walk away from me. Don't walk away from everything we've had. I stared at her, trying to find the words that would make sense of what she was asking. There was a part of me that wanted to reach out, to comfort her, to believe that maybe, just maybe, we could fix this. But then I thought about the lies, the months of deception, the nights spent alone, wondering where she was, who she was with. You don't get it, Olivia, I said, my voice thick with emotion. You took something from me that I can never get back. You broke trust in a way that can't be mended. How am I supposed to believe anything you say now? How do I know you're not just telling me what you think I want to hear? She was silent for a long time, her face flushed with regret. I know. I don't expect you to trust me. But I can't just let go of us without trying. I won't just give up, Quinn. Not like this. Not without doing everything I can to make it right. I shook my head, a bitter laugh escaping me. You think there's something left to fix? You've broken me, Olivia. You've broken us. I can't go back to pretending everything's fine. I can't look at you and forget everything you've done. She reached out for my hand, but I pulled it away, not wanting her touch, not wanting to feel anything that would bring me back to that place where I thought everything was okay. You've made your choices, I said, and I've made mine. The words stung. I could see the hope draining from her eyes, but I couldn't stop myself. I couldn't go back. The man who sat across from her now wasn't the same one who had walked into this cafe weeks ago, trying to save a relationship that had already crumbled behind my back. That person was gone. I stood up, the sudden movement surprising both of us. I think it's time for us to really say goodbye. Olivia's eyes widened, and for a second, I saw something raw in her gaze. Maybe it was the realization that she had finally pushed me too far, or maybe it was the weight of knowing that I was done. Either way, I could see the end of everything we had together in her eyes. She didn't fight me. She didn't plead. She just looked at me, her lips trembling, as if she was waiting for me to change my mind, to say anything that would give us another chance. But I couldn't. I couldn't do it. I turned to walk away, but just before I reached the door, I paused. Olivia, I said without turning around, my voice low but firm. I hope one day you find peace. But you won't find it here. Not with me. I didn't wait for a response. I walked out, leaving her behind. The sound of the door closing behind me felt final, and for the first time in a long time, I didn't feel the weight of the world on my shoulders. There was no more wondering, no more questioning. I had made my decision, and it felt like I had stepped out of a fog I hadn't even realized I was trapped in. I didn't know what came next. The days ahead were still a blur of emotions, of trying to figure out how to move on from the woman I had thought I would spend my life with. But I also knew something else. I couldn't keep living in the past. I couldn't keep holding on to someone who had already let me go. For the first time in months, I was free. But freedom came with a price, and as I walked down the street, the quiet, gnawing feeling of loneliness started to settle in. The apartment I had shared with Olivia suddenly felt like an empty shell. The things that once seemed so important now felt insignificant. I didn't know what my future looked like, but I knew one thing for sure. I couldn't go back to who I was before. I had to start over, and that terrified me. As the days passed, I slowly began to rebuild. I started taking better care of myself, working out, eating healthier, reconnecting with friends I hadn't seen in far too long. But there was always that empty space where Olivia used to be, a silence that lingered in my life, reminding me of the love I had lost, the trust one had given away, and the heartbreak that came with it. It wasn't easy, but it was the only way forward. And then, just as I was starting to believe I might be able to move on, another message appeared on my phone. I need to see you. We need to talk. It was from Olivia again. I stared at the screen, the familiar mix of dread and curiosity flooding me. I had promised myself I was done. I had promised myself I wouldn't get sucked back into this mess. But something told me this time was different. The message from Olivia sat there on my phone, a reminder of everything that had happened, of everything I had walked away from. I stared at it for a long moment, the feeling of dread creeping back. I had spent so much time trying to move on, trying to leave the past behind, and now here it was, pulling me back in. But this time, I knew I had to handle it differently. I wasn't the same person I had been when I walked out of that cafe. For days, I wrestled with the decision. Should I meet her? Should I hear her out one last time? I had already told her everything I needed to say. I had already made my peace with the fact that we were done. But a part of me, the part that had loved her deeply, the part that had been a fool for far too long, wanted to meet her, just to see if there was anything left to salvage. But after days of going back and forth, I realized something. I didn't need closure from her anymore. The closure I needed had to come from within me. I didn't need her apology, her explanations, her excuses. I had already forgiven her, in my own way, and now I needed to forgive myself. For the mistakes I made. For letting things get as far as they did. So, I did something I never thought I would do. I deleted her message. Just like that. I wasn't angry anymore. I wasn't bitter. I wasn't hoping for some magical reconciliation that would put everything back in place. I had let go of the past, and in doing so, I finally felt the weight lift from my shoulders. The weight that had been there for so long, that had kept me tied to someone who no longer cared for me the way I deserved. The days that followed were brighter, not because everything was perfect, but because I was finally embracing life on my own terms. I started doing the things that had once made me happy, things I had forgotten while I was tangled in that toxic relationship. I reconnected with old friends. I traveled to places I had always wanted to visit, and I took up new hobbies that helped me rediscover who I was. One evening, a few months later, I found myself at a park, sitting on a bench and watching the sunset. The sky was streaked with colors, and the world around me seemed to be at peace. For the first time in a long time, I felt a sense of contentment that I hadn't realized I had been missing. As I sat there, a message popped up on my phone. It wasn't from Olivia. It was from my friend, Jonah, inviting me to a weekend getaway with a few others. I smiled as I read it, grateful for the support of the people who had never left my side. For the first time in months, I felt like I was truly moving forward. I had found a new sense of purpose, a new sense of self. I said yes without hesitation. As I put my phone away and stood up from the bench, I took a deep breath. The air felt fresh, clean, like a new beginning. There was no more looking back, no more wondering about what could have been. I didn't need Olivia to complete me anymore. I didn't need anyone to validate my worth. I had learned, the hard way, that happiness wasn't something someone else could give me. It was something I had to create for myself. And that was exactly what I was doing. For the first time in a long time, I was excited for the future. Whatever came next, I knew I would face it with strength, with resilience, and with the certainty that I had the power to shape my own story. As the sun set behind the trees, I smiled to myself. The best was yet to come.